You will sleep better than you have ever slept. You've never been this relaxed. Are you ready to change your life? I'm Rusty Diamond, certified hypnotist. You don't need to leave your house. You can stay in your bed. You can stay in your favorite chair. You just need a computer or your phone. You can get a hold of me. Stay at home. I'll make your life better.
Hypnosisisgreat.com.
It's Rusty Diamond, motherfucker. It's Rusty Diamond, motherfucker.
Yo, man. Oh, Miss Rusty. What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Public Access Podcast, the podcast, here on the Rusty Diamond Podcast Network. Thank you, everyone, for being here. If you are listening to this, that's great. You can listen, but if you want to watch, you can do that. You can go to YouTube, you can go to Rumble, and you type in the Public Access Podcast. You know what? The show's going to show up, and there's a lot of them. Something for everyone. But if you're watching this and you love the guests, you love the content, but you don't want to look at my face, that's cool. I'm all right with that. Then you can go anywhere almost. You listen to podcasts. You can find this podcast pretty easily. You search the Public Access Podcast. Somebody made Public Access Podcast, but they did it after I did my show. So mine was there first, and I don't think they're doing theirs anymore. So go survival of the survival of the fitness, the Rickyism. You guys don't watch Trailer Park Boys. That's your cue to go watch Trailer Park Boys. But I'm not talking about Trailer Park Boys today. It's time for me to bring on my special guest. And my special guest is right here and right now. And my special guest right here and right now is Mary Harper. Thank you for being here, Mary. How are you today?
I'm doing better. Thank you. Good to be here.
That's good. Yeah, great to have you here. Yeah, it's been good. I'm sorry. It's been a weird day today. Right, my head's all in a weird place right now. So, yeah, thank you for being flexible with me and having to reschedule to do some stuff. So I appreciate that. And yeah, it's never too easy to do that, and I don't like doing that often. And so I appreciate you doing that. It helps me out a lot. So what does Friday mean to you? I like asking us Mondays and Fridays. What does Friday mean? Does Friday mean anything, or is Friday another day? Is Friday mean something else?
It used to mean a lot to me, when you're in school and when you're a young adult, but now I'm retired and it's just basically another day. I'm happy that I'm alive. That's all.
It's all you really need right there. It's just happy to
Yeah.
be alive. That's a great start. Um, and yeah, you get to live the good life, and it doesn't matter what day it is. Every day. What was I was talking with my friend yesterday, and yeah, I mean, time is kind of irrelevant. Time is everything, and time is nothing. Um,
Yeah.
it's only what we make of it. So it's whatever. Yeah, today is. So then, what do you get to do on your time when you finally get to have a few minutes? What's the first thing you get to do? You have 90 minutes to do something, 90 minutes free, and then you I don't know. It's not really you're going to do something else. Not like you have to go back to something, but you're going to do something else. But if you have like a 90 minutes where you can do something, what would you like to do?
Oh, anything from taking a walk or a hike to reading a book. Um,
Okay.
or sometimes I just don't do much of anything. I just sit in a chair and here comes the cat. The cat gets up here on my chest and purrs and cuddles. And then I call that feline paralysis syndrome because I'm paralyzed by my feline. And it's a terrible syndrome to have. It's one of those things you can't help and it can't cure. And so I'm forced to just sit there with a cat on my chest purring and being very sweet.
Yeah, I mean, you can't really throw them off then. You can't do
Oh,
much with them. Then they're there, and that's how it goes. I don't know where mine are. They're out somewhere right now, but yeah, they like to do that. And then when that happens, you know, like, you can't really do much. And plus with uh cats purring, it's so like it's one of those, you know, the vibrations of the cat purring is so healing, and
yes.
it's so cool. Like that's the thing that a lot of people don't realize. And I don't know when we're going to evolve to have something of that of ourselves,
Mm,
but I mean, we can chant, we can listen to other things at certain frequencies, but um, being able to produce a sound or vibration through our body to be able to heal ourselves and heal others around us is something that I hope we get to at some point. Maybe we can get to it in the next few years.
mm.
We'll work on it. We can work on it here.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, and it's amazing. I mean, there's I forgot what they call it. It's not. Is it bioengineering? Is that what it's called, or is it not?
Could
Like where
be.
they, okay, like where they use stuff from animals to like stuffed animals do, like you know, the cat purring to be able to put it into, you know, some sort of new product for humans
Um,
that they use, or like with the spider silk, they use that kind of technology to make something stronger. But I don't know. Who knows? Who knows? So
yeah,
so your cats, I end up talking about cats on here. Um, so you have one cat,
one. Yeah.
one cat gets pretty spoiled.
Yes. Well, she's also completely blind. When she was born as
Okay.
a little tiny kitten, she was born with herpes in her eyes and was dumped at a shelter in Austin, Texas. And
Oh,
I found out about her on Facebook. They were looking for a home for a little blind kitty. And I'm like, my daughter found out about it first. Mom, you've got to go down and see this kitty. The backstory of that is that both of my parents were blind. And so she figured having a blind kitty would be perfect for me. And you know what? It's worked out really well. Really have enjoyed this little kitty. This kitty has been through with me. I got her shortly before we knew my husband had kidney cancer. Did not realize he was that sick. And as he got sicker and sicker, she actually, being a cute little kitten, tried to kill him. Uh, he had an oxygen tube that went, quite some distance to the oxygen machine, and she chewed on that plastic. And one day I went in and I looked at him and I said, "You didn't look so good." And it turned out he couldn't get any air because she put holes in it.
oh, geez. Okay.
Yeah, cute little kitty, but no, she wasn't doing that maliciously. But
Yeah. Oh,
she's been with me through thick and thin, and she's just a delight.
that's awesome. That, you know, you gotta have that cat in there. And so then you said your parents were blind as well.
Yep.
So what was that like? Uh
Interesting. Yes. So it's a huge story. How do I tell this huge story? And it took me almost 10 years to come up with it, how to write it. So I finally did write it, and it came in the form of a book
oh,
that I wrote called The Sound of Her Voice, My Blind Parent's Story. And both of them were born with glaucoma. 1913, 1914. My mom was born first, and she had greatly enlarged eyes when the doctor and the mom and everybody saw this baby, they knew right away there's something wrong with his eyes. You got a kitty back there.
Yeah, I got a little kitty back there.
Yeah. So they knew right away there would be a problem. The doctor said, let me consult with the specialist in Indianapolis, but and he did. Oh, this was in central Indiana. And so a few weeks later, he got back with the parents and said, the specialist said, do not do anything with this baby. Just treat her normally, because don't take her around to all the different doctors and spend your money, because there's nothing that can be done. That baby will eventually be blind. So meanwhile, into January of 1914, my dad was born about 60 miles away. He was born in Muncie, Indiana, home of David Letterman and Ball State University, by the way. Well, David Letterman doesn't live there anymore, but he went to Ball State. Anyway,
Yeah.
My grandparents were both Italian immigrants, very, very devout Catholics. And when my grandmother saw my dad's enlarged eyes, she would not settle for no. She took him to all kinds of doctors and prayed for miracles, and went to extreme lengths to see if they could save his eyes, but they couldn't. And so my dad lost his sight finally at age 4, and my mom's gradually went away, and by age 11, she was totally blind. But they had remarkable stories, and I think it's because they were blinded early on in life. My dad always said, the older you are when you lose your sight, the harder it is. So he was much younger, and he had a wonderful older brother named Charles, who's 3 years older, and they did a lot of adventures. So I like to write about that. They did everything from when they got old enough, my uncle bought a jalopy, and this would have been like in the 20s. And he taught
Wow.
like 1920s. And when you didn't need driver's licenses, and he was 15, and he bought the car for, I think, $15, and his father made him get it insured for 20. And okay. And how he got the money to buy it, this was during Prohibition. So he went out in the county and along the country roads where people would be drinking the bootleg, and then
Yeah.
they would just throw the bottles in the ground, and he would go along and pick them all up and then wash them and sell them to bootleggers again and make a pretty good profit. He was pretty brave and pretty smart. So
Yeah.
anyway, he bought this car and he taught my dad to drive. So my dad's totally blind, and he stood behind him while my dad was, steering the car. And if you pushed his right shoulder, that meant turn right, and left shoulder meant turn left. And they had a lot of adventures that way.
Wow. Holy cow. Okay, so then yeah. And then you just yell when you need to break.
Pretty much. Yep.
Okay.
Pull
Yeah,
back on his shoulders.
wow. And so then, I mean, what was it like for you then? So if you, I mean, you've
Okay.
talked about this in your book. I don't want to get too into it because you've talked about it in your book. And
Oh,
I
that's
don't,
all right.
okay. All right. I'm curious.
Anything's
So,
fair game. So
okay.
basically what it was like for me, I probably grew up a lot faster than most kids. Most children, I was probably 4, maybe 5, when I was taught how to walk with my parents, because we had to walk a lot of places, or we would walk to the bus stop, which was just down the street. So mom would tell me, we'd come to a curb, I always had to stop. And if it was a particularly high curb and you had, my mom, I didn't want her to trip when she, put her foot down. Or if there was water in the gutter, I would say, oh, take a big step, mom, because there's some water there. So she would do that. And we walked across the street, and I'd pause again when it was time for her to put her foot up on the curb. But it was natural to me. I mean, that by that time, the time I really remember, when I'm in elementary school and whatever, I mean, that was just second nature for us. Mom would take my left arm and off we would go. And sometimes it would be a little more awkward when I'd have to walk with both parents, especially if my dad had his seeing eye dog with him. So here would be me, here's my mom next to me on this side, and then my dad would be holding onto her arm, and the dog would be over there, and it would be like, oh my God, we take up the whole sidewalk. And that was one thing I didn't like, was people knew who we were. My dad was real prominent. He was an attorney and a judge. And so he was in the newspapers a lot. And
Wow.
everybody knew who he was because he had a dog, and, he was a judge, and he was, a nice guy. So we were stared at a lot. And my dad had one big eye and won nothing. It was clearly just an empty socket here. And he couldn't really lift his eyelid up, but he could lift his eyelid up on the big eye. So whenever I saw that big eye getting bigger, I thought, uh-oh, I'm in trouble now, because that would mean he's angry. People didn't know that. And there would be some clueless people around town. Most people were very nice. Most people would come up and say, hey, Mario, how are you doing? This is Joe. Hi, Joe, how you doing? The other people would come up to, because they knew that my dad knew so many voices. He memorized people's voices. And he also memorized my mother's voice when they met in the 4th grade. That's the title of the book, The Sound of Her Voice. He memorized that. He loved her voice. But he knew lots of people's voices. So we were I was with my dad one time downtown Muncie, Indiana. A man comes up, hey, Mario, how you doing? Can you guess who this is? And I'm like, oh, that's the wrong thing to say to my dad, because I got big, and he was pissed. I was like, you don't come up to a blind person and play games like that. So his eye got real big, and I thought, oh, you're in trouble now, mister. And my dad says, I'm afraid I don't know. And well, then the guy said who he was. And then my dad did not want to hang around. I could tell in my arm, he was pulling on my arm, like, let's go. All right, bye. So, I mean, the people are interesting. Most people, like I said, don't play those kind of games. But then there's the occasional jokester that just can't resist testing the blind man. Really.
Yeah. And so then how did that kind of shape you then? Did you have more of a, I don't know, more of a let's just go, or more of a like someone, I don't know, not really no nonsense, or was it kind of the
Yeah.
opposite way?
I think I was always pretty much a born old soul kind of person, that I wasn't too childish in that sense. I mean, I like to play and whatever, but I always knew that I didn't act as immature as some of my peers. Because life was a little bit more serious. The mail would come, my mom would go get the mail, and she'd ask me to read it. I couldn't wait to learn to read. I was like, I can't wait. Anyway, so yeah, when she got the mail, she'd be feeling the outer edges of the envelope, and she'd say, this feels like a bill. Is this a bill? And I'd look at it and say, yep, Mom, that's a bill from the department store. And she said, okay. So she would put it up in a special place in the closet in a box, and my dad would gather them up once a week and take it all in. He had a secretary that would help pay the bills and balance his checkbook and so forth. Can you
Oh,
think
okay.
about it? Blind people can't write?
Right. Good point. Oh. Uh so you guys may lose her, may not. She may come back. But that's okay, because she's already here. You're already here. And so if you guys want to check anything out, rustydiamond.net, hypnosisisgreat.com, and check out Mary Harper anywhere. It's easy. I'll give you that information later on. But I hope we don't lose her, because she's in the middle of a story. So, uh, okay. Yep, maybe lost her. She might come back. Hope she does. If not, I can't pretend to be her. So, yeah, improvisation, you guys. I don't know. My head's all messed up today, so my improv is not quite as on fleek as the kids say. I don't know what they say that. I don't think that's the thing anymore, even. It's not quite firing perfectly, so bear with me here on that one. But I'm trying, so I don't know. It's got some stuffs going on. But yeah, I hope Mary comes back. I don't want to have a 20-minute podcast. What would I do with a 20-minute podcast? What would you do with a 20-minute podcast? If you had 20 minutes podcast, would you do it every week, every day? 20 minutes isn't very long. can barely scratch the surface. You can barely stop talking about cats in 20 minutes. I don't know where my cats went. One's over there in the window. The other one, I don't know where he ran off to. I think I need to take off some clothes because that's what kind of podcast this is. It's getting hot at 56 degrees. 56 degrees, I gotta take my shirt off. It's just hot. But yeah, I hope she comes back. I haven't gotten a message from her. So okay, she said, all right, hold on. I message her. Are you coming back? Okay. So yeah, I hope she comes back. I've liked talking with her so far, so I don't wanna lose her here. So maybe, maybe. Ah, good golly. So yeah, again, I want to thank everyone for being here because if you're not here, I'm I probably won't be recording. I probably would still record, but I like knowing that some people are being able to get some benefit from it, mostly from the people who are my guests. They have a lot of good insight. And so I really like that. I really like their insight and humor. And the people that I put on here are people that I want to put on. Here we go. Here's Mary. Mary is back. And like Mary, I wanted to put her on, wanted someone uh such as Mary to come on here. So
About
she
that. Um,
yeah, okay.
all of a sudden my internet went out and it took me a while to figure out how do I get back on?
Oh, I talked about something for a while, so yeah, you're still good. So you were talking about when it cut off, you were talking about about no nonsense
Yeah.
and
Oh, and vacations that we didn't get to
and
go on. Yeah.
so I don't, maybe I missed that part.
Oh, maybe, yeah, maybe I was talking and the internet had cut off. Well, one of the things I realized when I was in elementary school, kids would come back in September and say, oh, I'll talk all about their summer vacations. And I'm like, we didn't get to go anywhere. And it was because, of course, we didn't have a car. Now, I was the youngest of 4 children. And my oldest sibling was Anne, and she's 10 years older than me. So when she turned 16, we were able to get a car, and that was a big deal. So I was 6 and Anne was 16. Woo, we finally got to drive ourselves to the grocery store or go where we wanted to when we wanted to. We didn't have to wait on other people, and that was the hardest thing. And it's so frustrating to wait on a bus or be just so limited because also the bus wouldn't take you everywhere. So, we learned either you rode your bicycle or you walked. And sometimes you were lucky you get a ride maybe with a friend, but that didn't happen all that often. So
This was
yeah,
Indiana, you said? I'm sorry.
I'm sorry.
This was Indiana, you said?
Yeah, Indiana. Mhm.
So that maybe in the winter it might have been a little cooler,
Oh,
sometimes
cool. Yes, snow.
trying to get through some things.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. And
Uh,
back in those days, walking to school, of course, it wasn't that far a walk, but then I would walk home at lunchtime and walk back afterwards and go back to school. Those are very different kind of times, of course. Kids nowadays, they stay in the school all day long and don't go out, and they have a cafeteria. We didn't even have a cafeteria. So it was just a small Catholic school back then.
okay. And then you come home for lunch and uh have
Mom would,
whatever and
right? And turn around and go
head on
back.
back.
Yeah.
Okay.
In the
Yeah.
snow.
Yeah. And so then what about so then okay, so then you were uh you're now retired. You got to is that recently you got to retire?
Actually, I retired a long time ago because when my mother, oh, it's a long story, but when my parents were in their 80s, mom was failing and my dad was really worried. He said, I can't take care of her. I don't know. I can't cook. I don't know. My dad was brilliant, but when it comes down to the everyday household kind of stuff, that was not his forte. So he was really worried. And I said, well, why don't you just come down to Houston? That's where I was living at the time. And I will be happy to help you in whatever you need. Because I knew there'd be a lot of doctorate appointments and a lot of things that need to be done. So at that time, I was working in managed mental health care, basically on the phone saying, I'm sorry, your psychiatrist is not on our provider list. You'll have to go to a different psychiatrist. And then people get all mad. And it was so stressful. I hated it. So I was like, bye, I'm out of here. And I took care of my parents. They were in assisted living, but they didn't really need much assistance. The only thing they needed was a smaller place to live and someone to cook the food for them. So they would go down to the dining room and eat. And a lot of times I would bring them over to my house for dinners or lunch or whatever. So we had a good time together. Unfortunately, my mom didn't live very long. She got very sick with kidney failure before they'd been there even a year. But that still meant lots of doctor appointments that I would take them to. And that just took up a lot of time. So yeah, I've been retired since then.
Okay. Yeah. And so what happened once you were at a point where you're like, okay, well, now what? Have you gotten to a point of now what? Or did you just jump right into something else
You
once you got
mean like when? Like when they were living down there with me or
I,
after they
I
both passed?
after they both passed?
That was interesting. While they were, I was really, really busy while they were doing all that.
Sure.
While I was taking doctors and stuff, I wasn't my only thing I did. I was very active in Fibromyalgia Association of Houston. Back in the early 90s, I was diagnosed with fibromyalgia. And there was no internet. There was no very little information about it out there. So back at that time, we had meetings and phones line that you could call and get information, that kind of stuff. So I was very busy with that. And then I became the president of the group. So it's when my parents both passed, then I got real busy again, even more with that. And so I was doing a lot of work with that and traveling, love to travel. So I liked
Yeah.
having that kind of freedom.
So with the fibromyalgia, what I mean, because it's a whole, I don't know, because it's a hard thing to describe. I mean, there's so much difficulty with so much of it, and
Yes.
um, because yeah, I mean, yeah, there's the people who are just like, nah, it's nothing, and then you're like,
Right.
okay, well, yeah,
Uh,
and that makes it 10 times harder when you're going through it,
yeah.
and so, I mean, what's kind of changed since then? Has it just been a lot more information, or is it like a whole different ball game? Because like 4 or 5 years ago, like it didn't seem like, I don't know. It still seemed pretty primitive and pretty touch and go as to what they really know and what can really be done. And this was at uh, the Mayo Clinic.
Mm.
Um, and I mean, I don't know. And so, what have you kind of found with
You,
this?
you know, I've been out of touch with the field now for 4 or 5 years because I
Okay,
retired from that group. And I honestly don't know the latest. I know that there are certain drugs that can help. Some antidepressants like Zoloft or Cymbalta. I was on both of those for different years, and that helped.
for a
So
little
it
bit.
just, yeah, it did. And exercise, believe it or not, but everybody experiences it differently. It's interesting because when you're at a support group meeting and you ask people what their symptoms are, they'll all have some different kind of symptom. But it all affects us emotionally and certainly physically. And it affects you with your family. A lot of times you have a spouse or someone who says, well, you're just being lazy. Get off the couch. You can do it. You can, why aren't you doing it? You know, why aren't you cooking? Why aren't you doing something? Because we look healthy, because we don't look like we're ill. And that was pretty hard.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And so, yeah, I don't know. I mean, it's it's tough. Yeah, just being like, I can't today, like, or even like having to be, I don't know, like, yeah, some days you just don't know. You don't know when you're gonna wake up, and you just kind of feel like crap. And like, okay, well, uh, sorry, like I wish I could do something, but I have to be. You said be make yourself more flexible, and it's hard for a lot of people. And I mean, there's very few ways you can make it where it becomes easier. And so when you left that, where did you what would you do? What was your what now, or was there a what now for that?
No, I was sort of relieved actually. That was a lot of work and a lot of responsibility.
I
And I
bet.
had a good time doing it for like 15 years, but that was enough. In the meanwhile, a few years before I actually retired from fibromyalgia, that's when my husband had kidney cancer and he passed, and trying to grieve and uh, figure out life on my own was difficult because he was my high school sweetheart.
Oh wow.
I met him when I was 14 and we got married when I was 19, and he was my only boyfriend. So
Wow.
we had 2 kids together, and it was just super hard learning to live on my own. Um, that took up a lot of energy, a lot of
I
time.
bet. I
Yeah,
bet. What
yeah.
what was kind of, I mean, well, and what can you even do? Like what, I mean, where's that even go? Like that's tough. I mean, like that's what you know, and that's what's comfortable, and what's everything. What?
Once you get over, I don't think you ever get over it, but there's a shock, certain sense of shock, because he was diagnosed just before Thanksgiving, and then by the following May, that's when he passed. So he went downhill
Oh,
very
okay.
quickly. And that was just, you're living in the moment, just trying to make it through the day. And how do you take care of someone that's so ill, and getting help if you can. And when he was in hospice, that was helpful, but very painful. And you spend a lot of time that first year. Yeah, I was lucky. I was able to get out of bed, but spent a lot of time crying and thinking. And you have to just go through it. You can't avoid it. It's like that kid's song where you can't go over it, can't go under it, can't go around it, got to go through it. You
Yep.
got through it. You just got to feel the feelings and accept it. And I was lucky. I found a support group for widows, and I met a good friend through that, and that helped. And I was lucky to have my son around who would come around, and he showed up a lot more often after I was widowed. That was nice. Hey, Mom, you want some lunch? So that was nice. And
Yeah.
then I met someone 3 years later, and that changed my life because having somebody new in my life was quite the change.
What was that
And
like?
yeah, so that was fun, and that led to even more changes. Andrew, once he found out that I was in this relationship, said, "Oh, good, I don't have to keep coming for lunch all the time." I'm like, okay, well, he's busy. He does a lot of work around, and he's super busy. Anyway, so that was okay. And one thing sort of led to another. And so he had his own house. My partner had his own house in Houston. I had my house. He would come over every day, and that's fine. But then I decided, wouldn't it be fun to do something different? And I had been to Colorado Springs on vacation with my sister for a sister's trip. And I came back just glowing and say, I love Colorado Springs. It's such a nice little town, little compared to Houston, and
Right.
beautiful climate. And so I said, I could actually live there. And that set off a train of things that happened. And so I'm in my first year now of living here in Colorado Springs. So,
Excellent. Well, congratulations for
thank you.
getting there.
Well, it was a huge undertaking because I had lived in my house for 43 years, the same house
Whoa.
for 43 years. There's a lot of stuff in there. And my late husband had a gigantic, over 3,000 jar collection of mason jars, different kinds of mason jars. And a lot of them were on display in the house. So figuring out what to do with all that was a challenge. Um, and you're just cleaning out all those years of memories. That's not easy. But the good news is son decided he wanted to buy the house. So he's going to move in there after it's remodeled.
Oh wow, okay. That makes selling and not having to worry about all that stuff too
Exactly.
difficult.
Yeah.
Yeah. I just saw my brother sent me one of the houses we lived in just went up for sale, and it's like the someone bought it a few years ago, but and then just remodeled it. And so like it was interesting. We drove by it maybe like a year and a half ago. It was up in Connecticut when we were
Mm.
living over there, and yeah, they just put on all new siding on the house, and like the house looks totally different. Uh, but yeah, from like 1987 until a few years ago that they were living there, and
Mhm.
I mean, I'm sure it was probably the same. Sure, it was probably. I catch myself when I say that sometimes. I'm um with the kind of sure probably uh
Yeah.
um but I mean, yeah, it's a lot of stuff you have to move, even, you know, and a lot of stuff. And I've in the last 5 years I've lived in 5 different places and
Mm.
across the country, and just getting stuff down is not as easy as it could be theoretically. But um how much did you end up taking with you? Was
Too
it
much,
too?
probably.
Yeah, still
I'm a
getting rid of
collector.
stuff once.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I love things like old medicine bottles, the old bottles that promise to cure everything. And
yeah,
especially if they have labels on there, they're hilarious. Anything that was like before 1909 or 1918, I can't remember exactly the year that the FDA became involved, but for the FDA, that you could claim anything on a bottle. And yeah, so I have a bunch of those. I'm trying to slowly clean those out. Where do I put them? My old house, I had lots of room. Now I'm sharing a house with another person who's also a collector. So
it's
it's a challenge.
for sure.
And but it does feel lighter when you get rid of stuff. And I'm working on getting rid of stuff. And that's part of that's sort of fun.
Yeah. So how you like in the high desert?
Love it. Totally, totally love it. I'm so tired of sweating. Like every time you get outside in Houston, you just sweat. Take a shower, you start sweating. Here, it's just
Huh.
so nice and dry. Now my skin gets all dried out, but I love the
Right.
climate and I love the mountains. My house looks out on Pikes Peak. So anytime I
Oh,
want to see
okay.
Pikes Peak, I can just look out the window and like, oh, there it is.
Yeah.
So
And
it,
that's pretty nice. It's pretty nice to have that. But I mean, yeah. And so when you were in Houston, were you both in Houston, you and your partner now? 'Cause
yeah,
I have some friends there, and they say that if someone lives in North Houston and South Houston, that is like a long distance relationship, basically.
I went on match.com when I was ready to start
Okay.
dating. And that was one of the things I said. It has to be somebody who lives what we call inside the loop,
Yeah.
close by, because that's where I live near, not too far from downtown. Because I was not going to drive way out to the suburbs. It takes you 45 minutes to an hour. And you're absolutely right. It's like they're living on the other side of the planet. I just don't go out there. There's no reason
Right.
to. And it's so stressful driving. So I'm not trying to badmouth Houston. Houston was a great place to live, but
It's
I was
different.
ready for something different.
It's
Yeah.
different. Yeah. And I mean, yeah, you gotta have well different. Yeah, I like the high desert a lot. I was in Utah for a bit. I love the high desert climate.
Mhm.
Great. Utah. I was in Salt Lake City, so it was different. It was a
Yeah, very different.
different
Yeah.
kind of whole game, a whole different game. But I
Yeah.
mean, beautiful. And I mean, and then in Central Oregon, I spent a lot of time out in there too, and it's also the high desert out there, kind of
Mhm.
about the same sort of thing. And I love it. Like my my body feels great there. And
Mhm.
that's another thing. So how's your body do with the fibromyalgia in the high desert?
It likes it. It's
Yeah,
happy. Yeah.
I I felt that I hardly had to go to the doctor at all when I was living there. Like everything just sort of, yeah, felt nice, and I didn't have as many flare ups or whatever you
Hmm.
may call it. But yeah, so all right. And so what do you like doing while you're out there, out in the Colorado Springs, up in
Mm.
the
Well,
area?
one of the things I did was join a handbell choir here because I've been playing handbells for over 20 years and I love doing that. And when you're
Oh,
talking about sound and vibration, I was
yeah,
thinking about that because you can be tired out when you go to rehearsal and invigorated when you come back because those bells, the vibrating into your arms goes all the way up through. And it's fun being part of a team. And sometimes you screw up, that's okay. But it's just fun playing with other people.
yeah,
So,
and I mean, yeah, and those bells, and they got rid of so many. There's so many that used to be around, especially in the churches and such, and so many of those churches, like especially like the Catholic ones, are very acoustically sound, kind of set up to be able to have those
mhm.
vibrations of
Yeah.
that. So what got you into the bells? How'd that happen? Did
That
someone
was back in
throw?
Houston. I just saw the church I was going to at the time. They were starting up a handbell choir, and I thought, huh, well, that sounds like fun. I had played flute years ago in high school and college, and it's harder for me now to get the breath for it. So you don't have to worry about tuning the bells. The bells are already tuned. So it's just easier to do, and you don't have to worry about your breath. And so
Yeah.
I just had a good time playing the bells.
So have you gone, do you go around people uh, who could, use some feeling better, bring the bells around them, and everyone there starts playing, or is it more of during services, or
The choir I'm in here in Colorado Springs is a community choir. So we can go
okay,
anywhere that we want. And we actually have a couple concerts coming up.
cool,
Yeah, the assisted living place, and there's another one, I forget the senior center downtown. And then we'll have our own concert, but we're not affiliated with any church.
okay. So what do you play? What
Yeah,
kind of
anything we
songs?
want, which is part of the fun. We're doing one from the Jupiter, the majestic. I can't sing it, but it's a beautiful classical piece, and it's a very majestic piece. And then we have some fun ones like Phantom of the Opera. We're playing some parts
Uh,
from, and there's a couple of sort of not real religious, but sort of hymny ones, and just fun. But there's another one that the guy who did Syncopated Clock. I think it's very demanding because you have to be right on the part because otherwise people know that you've made a mistake. So some of those are fun. Other times, oh, we're doing the Beautiful, and it's not my favorite rendition because there's a lot of atonal chords in there, and it's like, heck, you can play almost anything you want, it wouldn't matter. But
just put the flag waving in the background, and
yeah,
everyone's gonna love it.
yeah,
Uh,
some of them, that one at our big concert, I'm pretty sure there's an organ going to be coming. And if an
ooh.
organ plays along with us, you won't be able to hear much of the handbells, some, but
Yeah.
so that's okay.
So how many different tunings are there for the handbells, or how many different
Well,
sounds? I guess how many, like,
well, if you think of it like a piano, you're
uh-huh,
starting at middle C and on up. So it goes C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C, and
right.
up several octaves. So if you're lucky and you have a good choir and they had some money to buy the bells, you can have up to 5 octaves. Other places only have 3 octaves.
Wow.
And there's all kinds of things that go along with it. There's things called mallets that have a little round like ball of yarn at the end and a stick, and then you can hit the bell with that. And you get different sounds out of the bells. So that's
What
part
do
of the
you
fun of
do?
it. Yeah. Uh,
What part do you do?
oh, I do B just below middle C. So
Okay. And
Yeah,
did you pick that, or was that what you
that's where they
were?
put me, which is fine. I just didn't
Okay,
want to play the real heavy bass bells. They're too big for me. That would
that's a
hurt my back, so I can't do that. But yeah, I'll play any position except the big ones.
So what about when you were playing the flute? Were you doing concerts then, or what was your
Oh, that was
flute playing? It
fun.
was
Oh, sure. That was back in high school and stuff. The school I went to was very small, so it didn't have a football team, but we had basketball. Basketball was very big in Indiana. So
okay.
the concert band would get all in their fancy uniforms with a braid on there, and we'd go to the basketball gym and play songs and pep songs and so forth. That was fun. And then we did
Yeah.
concert band, so we did concerts for that. In the same way in college.
And
Yeah.
then you turned whatever age, and you decided I'm getting back into it. I'm getting back into playing the music. I mean, was there music in between there, between the flute and there of anything, or was it
No.
singing in
Mm-mm.
the
I was
shower?
I was busy. Busy
Okay.
going to school or raising kids or whatever. And so I didn't do much with that. I had a piano at home, so I'd play piano some, but
So do you do any recordings? Do you like have a you have a studio in your house,
no,
the
I do
space,
not.
hook it up and have Mary Harper on the bells?
No.
No, not yet.
No, there are handbell choirs that do record and they are really good. They're a lot better than I am. They play some of them. There's a quartet here in Colorado Springs called the Forte Quartet. They memorize their music, and there's only four of them, and they move around like you wouldn't believe. And like, how do they remember that? I don't know. There's no way I'd remember all that. It's
Yeah.
impressive.
So if you were at home and you could go and put together a song you wanted to play, or make up your own, what would you do, or what would you make? Or what would you like if someone's like, I need you to record something right now, um, would you go and you make up your own song, or would you go and have one that you know how to do?
You
Like if
know,
you had a week, 2 weeks, a month?
I would probably just draw an instant blank. It's like when I was in elementary school and we were supposed to draw something. I'm like, huh? Draw what? So I drew the same thing over and over. It was here's a creek, which I love water. Here's the sun. Here's a tree. That's pretty much what I drew. So I think about, for me, it's just not there. I think some people just have it. Like anybody who can write songs, it's there. It has to come out. And the only thing I can equate it to, I never wrote poems, I hated poems. I'm not in poetry. My husband died, or when he was really sick, and then after he died, I started writing poetry. It was there. It had to come out. And
Yeah,
it wasn't great stuff. I don't think I'd want to necessarily publish it, but it was expressing what I needed to express. And then I haven't needed 2 cents. So as far as playing a solo or something on a handbell, that's not my forte, but other people do. I know of people that are really, really good playing that.
yeah. And so when you were writing these poems, did you know that they were going to be coming out to be poems, or were they limericks or something, and you just
No,
started
it was more
thinking
expressing my
everything?
grief. It was
Sure.
more,
Okay.
yeah.
Yeah. Probably not limericky.
No, not
Um,
lyrics. It wasn't.
it's always the first thing with a poems that comes to me, which is bizarre in a sense. But yeah, I mean, I don't know. I guess yeah. If you're in the right space, and yeah, whatever comes out is going to come out, and that's when what needs to come out is going to come out. And then so when you're writing your book, is it just the one book, right? The one book
Yeah,
with your
right
that you
now.
wrote about your folks.
Right.
Um, so when you wrote that, I like asking these questions. So did you were you like taking notes on a notepad or sticky pads, or did you have like legal paper? Did you have a typewriter? Did you
Yeah.
have a phone, a computer? Did you have a hatchet, or not a hatchet, a chisel and a stone?
All right.
D-
I did
uh,
hieroglyphics and the copper cave.
hieroglyphics. Perfect.
I was so lucky. My parents, especially my dad, loved to talk into a tape recorder. So he
Oh,
would
great.
sometimes sit down and he would tell stories, and I had those tapes and I transcribed them. Some of them I did myself, some I did by a professional because there's so many of them. And then I could look at that and be able to accurately quote them and tell the stories the way they should be
Oh,
doing. So
okay.
I was lucky with that.
And then, so did you have did you go through a publisher? Did you self-publish this, or?
I did it myself because I realized I was in my mid 60s by then. And I thought, okay, I'd taken all these classes and I knew the whole deal about publishing and traditional publishing. First of all, you got to write a proposal because this is nonfiction. I'm like, oh my God, I didn't want to write a proposal. It's a huge project, huge. And that brought me back to grad school doing stuff. I don't want to write papers like that. So I didn't want to do that in the first place, but then, okay, assuming I did that, then you have to find an agent who would be interested in representing you. If you were lucky, the agent might sell it to a publisher. The publisher may or may not decide to publish it. And this could go on for years. So why would I want to go down that route? I mean, that I was getting to the point where if I don't do something right now, I'll never do it. So I did hire someone to do the cover, and I had editors and I had proofers. So I just sent it out to people that, so that helped me put together a good book because I did not want to put out trash. There's an awful lot out there on Amazon right now that people don't bother to spell check, or well, they say, well, I use Grammarly. Well, no, that's not the same.
Right.
So yeah, or they'll, yeah, there's just a lot of boring books out there. And I can see why uh, agents don't particularly want to read memoirs, just because everybody has conquered cancer. Everybody has conquered an addiction. Everybody has survived I mean, not everybody, but you know what I mean? It's so
Right.
common that it has to be a really outstanding book, or it has to be written by a famous person. And if you're a nobody, why would they want to take the time to read your stuff? Because chances are it's not going to be that great. So that's one reason why self-publishing is good. But on the other hand, there's a lot of bad stuff out there. So I've been lucky. I've had really good reviews. And interestingly enough, so many people have said how inspiring the book is. And I'm thinking to myself, wow, I didn't set out to write anything inspirational. If I had sat down to write an inspirational book, I'd still be looking at a blank screen. There would be nothing on there. How do you write an inspirational book? I have no idea. But I knew that my parents' stories were so good, I did not want them to be lost. It was my overwhelming urge. Get this stuff down on paper. I don't want those stories to be lost. I want my children, my grandchildren to know them. And so I said, this is what I'm going to do. So then finally I was able, after 5 drafts, trying to figure out how in the world do I tell this story. I could have written one about my dad and his struggles in going to law school and being a judge and doing all the community things he did and being involved in politics and so active, and all the story, the backstory with his parents. And then I could have written one about my mom and all the stuff that she did. And even though they said, you're blind, how can you cook? Stay out of the kitchen. No, it's too dangerous for you to be in the kitchen. Or when my mother would say, I can at least do the laundry. And they say, oh no, you're blind. You can't see the laundry. No, you can't do that. So, and how they overcame all that and then married, which was a big feat in and of itself, because my dad had fallen in love with my mom and she of course was in love with him after high school, but she wasn't going to marry him then. She said, you have to prove to me that you can support me and a family. So everything was on my dad. He had to pass law school. He had to pass the bar. He had to prove that he could earn a living as a blind lawyer. And finally, he was able to satisfy all that, and she decided she would marry him. And then they had the stuff. First of all, there's a lot of societal and family people saying, 2 blind people marrying? How are they going to take care of each other? How are they going to support? How is he going to support her? How is this going to work? And what happens if they have kids? How is she ever going to do that? And so they had to rise above all the naysayers, and they ended up with 4 kids, and it it was not an easy life. It was a hard life, but they were happy. They lived gracious lives, and things were not easy, but um, they were very creative problem solvers. They figured out how to get along.
And I mean, what would you think your parents would say if they knew you had put together a book about them? How would they have taken it? Would they have been like, no, I don't want someone
Um,
doing that because I'm prideful, or is it like, thank you for doing this. This is great. But I mean, either way, like
I think
maybe they're
they'd be
shy about it.
proud. It took me over 10 years to do it. It took me a long time. I would be writing and writing and writing, and then like, no, this isn't right. And then I'd start over. So I think they would be proud that I persisted and got it done. And they were sort of used to being written about when I was doing some research on newspapers.com, one of my favorite news. I should get paid by them.
You
But
should. Yeah.
I love them.
Every
I typed
time.
in my
Send her a
dad's
check.
name. I typed in his name, and over 4,000 hits came up with Mario Peroni on there. And I'm like,
Uh,
what? How could he possibly be? And he was in the paper. When he was a judge, he was a judge twice. So every single thing he did in the courtroom was put in the newspaper. Every time he
well,
went to talk to Boy Scout Troop number 30 at St. George's Church, he would go, it would be in the newspaper that Mario Peroni and his dog Carlo went to talk to the Boy Scout. So, I mean, yeah, those all counted. And then there were other stories more interesting that were written about them, like how do they do this? And oh, Mario Peroni's getting a new dog, or whatever they thought was news back then. Back in the 40s and 50s, things were very different. And 60s,
right.
what they would write about. So that
Uh,
was fun.
yeah. And then so where's your writing now? Are you going for something, another one, or is it are you good? You got
Um,
you got across where you wanted to get across?
Yeah, right now I'm sort of doing more publicity, trying to get more word out about this first one. And people say, "Oh, I want another one," and like, well, I guess there's more I could put in there. There's certainly a lot of things that I left out, but I don't have any plans right now to come up with another book.
I
That took me so
mean,
long. That first one, I'm like, oh, I don't know. I'd be 80 by the time this one would come out.
and well, I mean, so then okay, so if you're getting the word out, then how are people going to find it? How are people gonna find the book? How are they gonna find you to follow you or learn more about you?
Sure. Amazon.com is all you do is type in the sound of her voice and it'll pop up. My blind parent's story. You can also put my name in there, Mary, excuse me, Mary P. Harper, Harper. I have a website, which is Mary P, as in Peroni, Harper.com. So you got to have that P in there. And also on that website, you can find my email address, which is mary@marypharper.com. I love
Oh,
emails, so feel free to email me.
you
I
love
love answering
email.
questions. Yeah.
What is it about email that you love?
Well, I like hearing from, a lot of times I'll get just unsolicited emails from people who've read it, and they'll tell me how much they like the book, or they'll say, your father handled my adoption. I'm like, oh my gosh, that would have been
Whoa.
a long time ago. Or uh, I will say I have not gotten anybody from who said, you put my grandfather in jail. My dad would put people in jail if they deserved it. Uh, but
Right.
uh, yeah, so, but most of them will say, there's a lot of them from my high school, they'll remember me and my parents. So yeah, it's been fun to read their memories.
Do you do any letters or leave the hieroglyphs on the cave walls and for someone to come by and leave a response to it? Do you like doing
Oh yeah, sure.
handwritten letters or as well?
Um, I would love to do more handwritten letters. I have arthritis in my thumb, so holding a
Okay.
pen sometimes is really hard. So if anybody gets a handwritten letter from me, it means that it was a special.
Yeah, I like that. Oh,
Yeah.
well, hey, Mary, thank you so much for being on here. And I'm happy we got to talk about we got to talk about not knowing what we're going to talk about and get to where we got to. And I liked getting to talk with you. So thank you very much for
Well,
that.
thanks.
And
Thanks for yeah.
you're welcome. And I hope you have a great rest of your day and get to go out and do whatever you want to do. It's your
There you
day.
go.
So
Yeah.
yeah,
It's
perfect.
all right.
Well,
Thank
hey,
you
we'll have
again.
you're welcome. Talk to you later.
All right.
All right. Mary Harper. So you guys check her out. Check out her book. Put a link in there and say, hey, Rusty sent you. Everyone knows what that means, right? Just Rusty sent me. So also thank you guys for listening here. I don't know. I didn't pass out. So I don't know. Something's going on with me, with my head. So I don't know. So thank you for being here. And I didn't want to cancel on Mary. So yeah. So thank you everyone for being here and listening. If you want to check out me, rustydiamond.net or hypnosisgreat.com. And thank you, thank you, thank you. And that is the show. Man, boom.
It's Rusty Diamond, motherfucker. It's Rusty Diamond, motherfucker.